Welcome, everybody. My name is Gary Grote. I'm the Executive Director for the Greater East Aurora Chamber of Commerce, and this is our fifth in a series of 10 real-world careers meet the professionals presentation. Our purpose in doing these is to connect students and teachers directly with individuals in various careers and industries to provide a background and a pathway to a possible career in that field. And today we have two people in the trades field. We have Chuck Snyder from Charles D. Snyder and Sons Inc. Construction, and Bob Nowak from Robert Nowak Heating and Air Conditioning. And I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today. I'd also like to thank Absolute Care of Aurora Park for being a sponsor of this event to make this possible. We really appreciate their support. We're going to ask anybody who joins us to stay muted. If you have any questions, you can submit them to the chat room. And we are taping this for future use. We'll have it archived and people could use it to view at a later time. But I'd like to introduce, as I said, Bob Nowak and Chuck Snyder, and thank you, gentlemen, for being with us today to talk about your respective fields. And Bob, why don't we go to you first and give us a little background on yourself and Robert A. Nowak Heating and Air Conditioning.
Thanks, Gary, for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to speak to the young people because our industries are in desperate need of people. My background goes back quite a ways. I'm not going to get into my Catholic school, but when I graduated, I took an exam and went to Hutch Tech High School. And that was at the time you had to take an exam to get in there. And I got into the mechanical technology course, not knowing really what area of mechanical technology that I would, end up in. And so while I was over there, I enjoyed my 4 years. In fact, I enjoyed it more so than the college that I had. Reason being is that it was more like a trade school. It had shops, and shops is where you learn. I learned a machine shop. We had heat treating, where I learned my brazing, soldering, welding, burning, how to treat metals. Then we had a pattern making shop where I learned my woodworking skills. Yes, we didn't learn how to build houses, but we learned how to handle wood tools, how to sharpen your tools, how to use them properly, which I use all this today. And then we had a foundry, and we actually cast items in the sand and poured metal, molten metal, and had that. And it's kind of interesting because all the things that I learned, I am using today in my field, which is excellent. So that's why it's important for the high schools to get into more of these kind of things for the students. I graduated from there with a Regents diploma and a city diploma. And then after that, I went up going to what was called at the time Erie County Technical Institute. So I guess I'm dating myself here. It's better known now as Erie Community College. And I took a 2-year engineering course that they had and received an associate's degree. So after that, I had ended up moving on to a construction company. And they're well known. They're known for building the Tops Markets, the Bells, the IGAs. And they had a construction division and they had a service department. And I worked for 4 years in a service department fixing everything, anything mechanical, electrical, carpentry. I honed a lot of the skills that I had and did that with them for 4 years. But working there, I came across a refrigeration man who took notice of my my abilities. And he says, you know something, Bob? He says, you should get into a trade. He says, like refrigeration and air conditioning. I says, well, I says, what are you suggesting? He says, well, I belong to RSES, that's a Refrigeration Service Engineers Society, and they run a school, and it was at the time they ran out of the Harkness Center, and they ran a school at night, and they had different courses. So I took a 3-year air conditioning and refrigeration course, and then took a heat pump course, and then electrical and controls course. And after the 4 years at that construction company, I moved on to a local heating company for 4 years. And it was kind of nice because when you are working in the field on the things that you are studying, you absorb this information so much more easier. So, once those 4 years were over, I just moved on and I went into business for myself. And I just said to myself, if I could just make a living at this, I'd be happy. Well, what was just getting into business for myself turned into 40 years right now with a large, vast, loyal following. And right now I am like semi-retired, and my son is now running the business. He got his education from me. He was working during high school, college, breaks, everything else, and he graduated with a couple of degrees in business from Oswego State. So then this issue comes up about college. Do I need to go to college? I'll just take a minute here and I'll drop out. Here's something I found out just recently researching something. In the United States Department of Labor Statistics, they're telling us that only 20% of the jobs out there require a 4-year degree. That means 80% of them don't. However, they're saying that with the jobs that are out there, 67% of the jobs require a post-secondary technical education. So if you are on the fence about going to college or moving on learning trades, this is a good piece of information. And if you want to learn more, you can go to the website www.bls.gov, and you will learn all about the HVAC field and about 700 other careers. So this may be helpful in helping you decide on what you're going to do. So I think that would be the short version of my life, Gary, and thank you.
Yeah, Bob, I think that's really important. I'm sure Chuck will reconfirm some of the things that you said. But yeah, that's one thing that we found as a chamber and doing research and talking with businesses is that those, you don't always need to go to college or there are trade schools, there's 2-year colleges, but there's also the hands-on experience and different types of other certifications that you can get as a substitute to provide for a quality career and a fulfilling career too. So, but thanks, that was very good. Hey Chuck, what about yourself? Can you give us a little background and your perspective?
Sure, Gary. Well, I'll start with my grandfather started a painting business back in the 20s years ago, and as obviously had my father was working for him, but then World War II came along, and my dad went to fight in the war, got home from the war, decided he really liked the construction part of it, not so much the painting part of the business, but the construction part of it. So we took some courses and so on. And in the real early 60s, they started a corporation with the painting business. My grandfather, my uncle, and my father started that construction business. So, I mean, I grew up right in the business from the time I was just a baby. And as time went on, summers came along, and in those days, kids were frankly all summer long and holidays and that. And I got into the business working with my dad. And I worked for Dad for about 13, 14 years, and I struck off on my own in the mid 80s. And I just truly enjoy the business part of it and the construction part of it, and standing back and looking at what you did with these two hands. And as time went on, my middle son, he took an interest in it, and as is Bob's case there, he is taking over the business, and I too am semi-retired, and he'll be a 4th generation in the construction business with the Snyder name. So that's really kind of neat to see. And at the present time, I have all of my sons with me. So
Okay.
there's that part of it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chuck. I didn't mean to interrupt.
But as as Bob said, you know, one of the things that I found is you certainly have to have, you know, a high school education. That goes without even questioning that. But some algebra helps in the construction business. But one of the things that a lot of people overlook is good people skills, because we are working right in people's homes. And lots of times for us, you know, when you're on a larger project, you'll be working in someone's house for 4 months, and they'll give you a key to the house. You know, they trust you. Just think about that. How many people would you give a key to your house and say, come and go as you need to? People skills are big. And I just wanted to point that out, along with the things that Bob said. I just wanted to point that out.
Chuck, your audio cut out.
Again?
Yeah. So.
Did you catch the end of that or not really?
No, just the last couple, little bit we missed out on.
Well, I just wanted to say that people skills are very important, along with your skills with your hands and so on and so forth. But people skills are very important too.
Okay. And well, let's go back to, I mean, both of you have developed, have long careers in your respective trades, and you came about it a little differently through education and then through family, the family relationships, growing up in the business and everything else. And I think there are two things here that the longevity of your businesses and growing up in them, developing them. I think that's one thing that students can look forward to. And you can get into a career, you can learn a specific trade, but in the long run, like you two each have, you can have your own business. You don't have to work for somebody. You can be the employer, the decision maker, the owner, and have your own business. So there's an aspect of that too that comes from learning a skilled trade, to be able to parlay that into something a little bigger. But I think the other thing is that we know that in both of your areas, there's great opportunity. There are great opportunity for jobs and employment, and jobs that pay well, and jobs that provide fulfilling careers. I mean, can you maybe each talk a little bit about that? You know, what you find, you know, how you've seen that within your field?
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, go ahead there, Chuck.
Okay. Time is your friend when you're in the construction business, because it takes time. I know Bob and I and Gary were talking briefly, and we were mentioning how long it takes to become a skilled or semi-skilled person in the trades. One of the things in our business that I always liked is the diversity. You know, I told the guys many times, you could be tearing a roof off one day and you could be building cherry cabinets the next. And to find that carpenter that is qualified enough or skilled enough to handle all of those, everything in between, you know, it takes years. It really takes years. I mean, to be honest with you, it takes 10 to 12 years to get a carpenter that is skilled where he can handle almost every situation. But that being said, the growth and the interest and the changes and let's try this and how about that is endless. You're not doing the same thing every day. You're not in the same place every day. You know, summer it's nice, it's beautiful. Well, there's been a whole lot of winters when it wasn't a whole lot of fun to be out there, you know, framing that house up. But that's part of the business, and you look back at that someday and you say, geez, I remember building that house right in the middle of winter. It was, you know, colder than heck, and there we were. But, you know, I think some of those things are just part of it too. Bob?
Yeah, I just agree with what he says over there as far as being hot or cold. We are in the elements, summer and winter. We go and we're on roofs, And we could be inside in a cool place. You could be all over the place. But our career, one of the things I want to stress for a lot of the young people is that, you know, in the HVAC field, on my particular field, there are so many disciples. You're almost like a doctor. Doctors could be a family doctor. They could specialize in orthopedics. They could specialize in gynecology. It could be anything. In our area, you can go into so many facets, disciples. There's service, there's sales, installations. We have residential, commercial, industrial work where you're doing repairs or installations in factories, manufacturing places, process places. Then there's institutional. We have schools, government buildings. And you could end up with the proper knowledge, you could be training somebody for a manufacturer who is a HVAC company, a product company, and doing that sort of thing. So, you know, and then our industry is broken down so much so by just heating and air conditioning. We have radiant, both hydronic, which would be warm water pipes in the concrete. They do that down at the library downtown. That's what melts the snow. You could have high, what do you call low intensity overhead. If you go into some of these service garages, for example, at a dealership, you'll notice they got these things look like muffler pipes. So there's radiant heating. We have ultra low refrigeration. Talk about COVID-19. They got to keep this this inoculation below 15, below zero. So they have to have people that work on ultra lows. Then there's electronics, pneumatic controls. You could be a sheet metal fabricator in a sheet metal shop. Then there's humidification, dehumidification, air cleaning, another popular item with COVID today. There are so many directions and so many opportunities in our field that you could pick something out that you particularly care for and move on to those. So, you know, you can spend a lot of time looking at other fields, but here's one here, and just like Chuck was saying, you know, if you're not an office person, you don't want to be boxed up in a room. You will always have a different location to be at every day. You could be in just about anywhere in your area in any kind of atmosphere, be it business or residential. And one of the things that will happen is because of this diversity of work, you won't get bored. And you got to remember, here's a little tip. If you are 19 or 20 years old, you got at least 45 to 50 years to go to retirement. Do something you enjoy. Get something you're excited about. And going to work will not be a job. It'll be having fun. And that's why I still do what I do. And I still enjoy going out. I enjoy meeting people. You know, and like Chuck said over here, you know, besides all those other things that you have to be a psychologist, because you're dealing with people on a daily basis and you don't know if this guy's got a bad day or he's having a good day, but you got to know how to handle yourself in that situation. So you might as well throw that one in there too with you.
And as you said, Bob, if you enjoy this, if you enjoy it, and let's face the facts here, nobody loves their job every single day. You know, everybody has a bad day once in a while, even Gary. Not too often, but once in a while. But if you enjoy it, you'll get good at it. And when you get good at it, just as Bob said, it's no longer a job and you look forward to work. And if you're going to do it for 40 years, you should enjoy what you do.
And Chuck, here's one thing I want to add also. Once you learn these skills and you're fully vested in what you do, you can go anywhere in the world. You don't have to stay in Buffalo, although we love everybody to stay in Buffalo. If you would have an interest to go somewhere and do this, our trade is necessary in the armed forces. It could be any part of the world. It could be over here in Western New York. It could be in Florida, California. It could be in the mountains of Utah. Wherever you want to go, you have a free ticket once you acquire those skills and the experience.
For sure. As long as people live in houses, there's going to be work because there just has to be. And
Exactly.
Here's the other part of it too, is it can't be outsourced. You know, putting in that new HVAC system in your house, you got to have Bob or one of his men come to your place to do it. You can't be outsourced.
They can't send your job overseas. What he's trying to say, if you understand that part, you know. And then along with this, you know, as far as for, you need to have certain skill sets. A lot of these skill sets are common in a lot of the trades, but some of the ones that are particularly interesting for the HVAC field is, first of all, we have a lot of electrical in our field. So you got to be familiar with line voltage, control voltage. You got to understand the basics of amperage, capacitance, stuff like that. You have to have a little plumber in you, because you're going to be hooking up drains to furnaces and everything else. So you got to understand some of the plumbing. The heat treating part is important because you're going to be brazing, you're going to be soldering. In some cases on a commercial or industrial, you may be burning a metal or welding, okay? We talked about psychology, but then of course, and there's another thing here, there's OSHA requirements that you're going to learn for safe use of tools, ladders in the workplace. This is to protect you and whoever is on that job site and your customer from having a problem. And when you're in school, you know, you wonder why some of the courses you got to take. And I'll tell you what, in our field, general science that I had in high school is very important, because there you learn the principles of pressure, temperature. Now that's Fahrenheit and centigrade, and sometimes Rankine. But also you got to understand pressure. Pressure is measured in pounds per square inch. It could be inches of water column. It could be something we call feet of head. Could be, you know, just about any measurement. We use that, all of that in our industry. And understanding how the principles of heat and cold, how heat always travels the cold. And then we do heat loss calculations. We don't sell any equipment anywhere. We measure a house and we get all the windows, doors, windows. We understand insulation. We understand what their R values are. Years ago, I learned to do this by hand. Then with the advent of Windows 95, program came out that you could do this on a computer program, which makes it faster because it does all the math, you know. But you have to understand a house and how it's built and what its insulation values are, okay? And then, you know, we have so many more things. There's chimney venting and draft. Psychometrics is study of air. We use all that in our business. And then piping. We pipe anything that flows. It could be water. It could be natural gas. It could be refrigerant. All of that's done in our field. So there's a lot of skill sets that you will use in our field, but also you'll use them in Chuck's field. Because I know, for example, when carpenters go there and they're coming to an outlet in the wall, hey, they got to at least know where to find the outlet, how to turn it off so that there's no accident. So a lot of these things are used in a lot of the trades that we have.
Absolutely. Construction. Oh, did you want to say something, Gary?
Well, go ahead, Chuck, after you're finished.
Construction, just as Bob is saying, it's such a diversified field. You can, if you like heavy equipment, you know, guess what? When you start that house, what's the first thing you do? You put the driveway in. If you enjoy that part of it, if you enjoy, you know, concrete, there's the foundation, there's the flat work, you know, the basement floor and the garage floor. There's framing, that part of it, where you get into rafters and headers and reading a plan and deciphering and making, you know, as we say, you know, make it look like the picture, you know, and right on down the list, you know, insulation and drywalling and painting. You know, painting is something that's taken so for granted, but a good painter, you know, is invaluable. Let alone the mechanics. The house has to heat. The house has to cool. It has to, you know. In Bob's side of the business, you know, there's solar gain that you have to take into consideration. You know, if you have a lot of windows on the south side of the house, I believe Bob will attest this to be true, is that figuring out cooling is harder than figuring out heating, because there's just so much solar gain in our area here that we don't anticipate that. It's Western New York, it's cold all the time. So, okay, the furnaces, but
Well, this is
to the whole process.
I think this is a really good discussion and explaining the total detail of what's involved in each of your trades. I don't think a lot of people think of the things that each of you had mentioned that are part of the job that you need to learn, that are exciting, that help. At the end of the day, you can say, you know, I've done something with my two hands. I built something. I've accomplished something, and you can actually see what you've done, the result of what you've done. But I guess leading up to that, can each of you maybe just briefly talk about? I mean, you hire somebody in your respective industry, like from the first day, for the first few months. What kind of training or supervision do you provide to help them grow in your industry? Chuck?
Go ahead.
Okay. For us, I mean, when people come on board, generally speaking, let's assume they're right out of college or high school, which is fine. You know, they have no real skills in this, so they work with someone. You know, and to be honest with you, yep, you get the grunt jobs. You know, you just plain do. That's where we all started. We all started on the first rung of the ladder. You know, that's just plain the way it is. But as time goes on, and you pick up this skill and pick up that skill, and you know, all of a sudden, okay, you're the cut man, which is a pretty important job for the job. You know, and you learn those skills as you grow by working with someone and gradually getting more and more responsibility, and that's how we grow. It's a one step at a time. It just takes time. Bob?
Yeah, it's pretty much with us. I'll tell you what, a new person, he will work under the supervision of a journeyman, which in our case could be myself or my son. And because of the fact that we deal with things like natural gas, you're bringing out a turbo torch or a propane torch. You are working with electric, working alongside, and they sort of like observe what we do and how we do it, and we explain this to them. And then we will go, depending on the person's background and education. I've been able to put a young man with the proper education in a truck in about 2-3 months, and we would call him seaworthy. And then, of course, as we explained to him that when you're out there, if there's anything you don't know or you're not sure, because there's no such thing as a dumb question, call. I don't care how it is or what it is, call. And we were more than happy to go over the situation. And then, of course, we also have other people that don't have a lot of background. It could take them as much as a year before we will let them out into a service vehicle of their own to go out and service customers, and that gives them a great opportunity to be trained exclusively well. And I like to say that, for example, someone who is really like to get to be a journeyman, he's about 5 years, and that's just to get them out there. Then there's all the, believe it or not, the engineering that goes with this. I talked about heat loss analysis, cooling calculations, understanding psychometrics. You will learn that in another 5 years. So it's almost like as many years as a doctor goes to school, and then he has to perform in a hospital for a while. Yeah, just as like in Chuck's field, 10 years to fully train somebody. And after that, the opportunities are sales engineer. You can go out and do estimates because you learn how to install and apply a product the way the manufacturer asks us to. And then once you've done that work for all them years, you're a shoo-in. You could be a salesperson. A lot of companies have outside salespeople that just go out and that's all they do. That's another career opportunity once you've learned the trade. So we're very careful when we're a good judge too of when someone is correct to be out there on their own.
And one thing we do is when somebody comes on board, you know, they usually have an idea of what they like, whether they like woodworking, because we do a lot of custom cabinets and a lot of custom work in our shop. You know, maybe they like that part of it, or maybe they like the framing part of it, you know, or maybe they like the, you know, siding part of it, or whatever phase of this they want. they think that they want to do, you know, you start them along those lines there. And as time goes on, people, you know, again, they get best at what they like. So pretty soon that guy that's, I mentioned the painter before, well, we do a lot of cabinets and finishing and so on at the shop. If somebody really likes painting, and you know, we have a spot for that person, and usually after 6 months or a year, you can tell where that person really likes to be. If that person doesn't like heights, well, he's probably not the best person to have on your framing crew. You know, if he's really meticulous and he measures to the 16th or 32nd of an inch, he'd be a great person to keep in the shop and train in that. So, you know, people develop what they really like to do. If you just give them the chance and let them try it all once or twice or 3 times, and it'll get back to you what they're best at.
Well, see, this is really good information, I think, for students to understand, and for teachers and counselors, that the detail, talking to you guys to see, you know, what the opportunities are, and there are a broad variety of opportunities in each of your fields, and the training that it takes, and the learning initially what skills you need, what you like to do, and how you can further develop that. And obviously, from what both of you say, learning is continuous. No matter what, you're always learning something. So it doesn't end. But there's great satisfaction and great challenges in what you guys do, and you can see that just from your own personal experiences and everything. So,
Hey, Gary, I'd like to add something to that. You said something that just stuck in my mind here about continuing education. Just because you graduate from school and you go to a job, your learning doesn't stop. Today, we're still, for example, we get all our trade magazines, periodicals. We're always doing online webinars. Years ago, factory people used to come to a distributor in the area, and they would offer contractors come in and you know, meet for a morning or something like that. But today, the way it's done, it's all done online. And all the time we are doing webinars where their manufacturers is showing us their new line of furnaces, air conditioners, or what have you. It doesn't make a difference. It's whatever equipment that you have. And this is where and you have to stay on top of this. If you do not stay on top of this, the trade will leave you behind. You will not be able to, let's say, for example, you know, service the new condensing boilers, because everything today is all solid state electronics, circuit boards on there. You have to know how these things think, and they're like computers, and you test input, and they talk about like garbage in and garbage out is what I'm trying to say, you know, and that's how you check these things. But you have to be introduced to it, and this stuff needs to be explained. So you need to continue, and that's very important. So learning will never stop.
Sure, you know, people want to walk into their house and they want to hit that switch. They want to turn on this light right there, which is pretty simple, basic stuff. It has been that way for years. But Bob says now we have, you know, conditioned houses, conditioned buildings, where at night, you know, you turn the thermostat automatically turns the temperature down and brings the humidity up to a certain percentage in the winter. That's relates to the relative humidity. There's a lot to it. Where people just, you know, think they just walk into their house and boom, you know, here we are. There's a lot that goes into it to keep that house comfortable, to keep the gas bills within line, to all the way down the road to, we just had 3 feet of snow about, what, 3 weeks ago or something like that. We had probably 4 people that called with leaks. You know, can you shovel the snow off of my roof because we've got a leak in the bedroom here, or whatever the case may be. Houses are not like a swimming pool. It's not like there's a system that you need to use to get that roof not to leak when the ice is backed up a foot thick at the eave, you know, with ventilation and heat loss there, as Bob says, ventilation at the eave and at the ridge to get rid of that hot air, because you're always going to have some heat loss in the house, no matter what the insulation is. There's always some heat loss. I'm sure Bob is getting into heat exchangers now and fresh air. You know, houses are getting so tight that you have to put in a fresh air intake to bring fresh air into the house because the air just keeps recirculating. And, well,
Those are now, by the way, those are code requirements in like the town of Cheektowaga, and I think Amherst is in it too. So when they build these new houses, they're using what are called air-to-air heat exchangers. And basically what they're doing is they have a fan, and this fan is moving air from the outside and pushing it in the building. At the same time, another fan is pushing it out the house, and the two of them pass through a heat exchanger, and basically those are about 80% efficient. So if it's the winter time and you're exhausting your heat, you're warming up that air coming into the house, and there's an 80% transfer. Houses are tight, and they're making them so tight because of the new technologies with house wraps and everything else. Years ago, they made a big mistake, and with vapor barriers, they used 4 mil plastic, and they basically made that thing into a balloon. And then they had problems in the houses with high humidity and then sicknesses. There's actually a commercial term for that. I can't remember at the moment, but it's a sick house syndrome, basically, is what it is. That in itself is a whole nother field. It's amazing what directions that you can go through in house construction and all the related things that are involved in a house. And you were talking about these things where people like to just turn things on. The latest craze is these Wi-Fi thermostats. Boy, it's like everybody's got to have one because that way what they do is they stick shift it from their mobile phones. And by the way, a number of years ago, just as a little thing here, they actually had a remote controlled hot tub for the house. You could actually start to fill the water in the tub, and you could actually have the heat to a certain temperature right from your phone. The technology is going crazy. So,
ready for you when you get home, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Just a couple of things to wrap up, and I know you've talked about this already, but I think it's important to emphasize that in addition to the key things in terms of skills and learning and opportunities, the soft skill, essential skill kinds of things to be able to talk to people, work with people, be part of a team and everything are really important. And also that there are jobs available immediately in your fields. So I don't know if you can both just briefly address that as we wrap up.
In our field, what we look for when we're, let's say, interviewing a person, we try to ask them maybe what their hobbies are. If the individual says, well, I work on my car, I work on the engine and transmission, I fix bicycles, I do anything mechanical relationship, it tells us that the person has the mental capability. And all he needs to do is to learn all the other items that we talk about. But it's important to have the basic, the hand skills and a desire to do mechanical work, because everything we're doing is mechanical, and that would go for the carpentry industry too. If you're doing work like this, and I got to tell you a story. One time, and this is no reflection, I don't even mention the trade school, but the person came out. It was a six-month trade school, and the guy did not know how to read a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
We check for that.
He must have came from our place first, Bob, or came over to us afterwards, because
yeah. So little things like hobbies and what your basic capabilities are, we can tell right away if that person is trainable. And in many situations, he will be trainable. And yes, we will put the effort, but he's also going to have to make a commitment to educate, not only on education we provide, but he needs to educate on his own time and learn things. If we give him an assignment, we're doing that right now with an individual. We'll tell him, listen, there's a thing about, I don't care, it could be something about blowers in a furnace. Go online, see what you can find, see what you can learn. And then tomorrow, while we're working, tell us what you saw. and explain to us if you understand or not. Well, things like that we can do with people who have the desire and some basic skills. They are trainable. And in today's world, because of the shortage of everybody, you've got to come from somewhere, and this is a good place to come from.
Yeah, as Bob says, one of the things that limits our business is people. We can buy some more tools, and we can get more jobs, and we can do all of that, but you have to do what you're committed to. And when people come on board, if you just give it some time, it's never fun those first, frankly, 6 months for sure, just because you're getting used to, maybe you're not accustomed to, we started 7:30. I'm sure Bob starts quite early too. Maybe you're not accustomed to getting up at that hour 5 days a week and working 9 hours. We work 9-hour days. You're tired by the end of the day, but if you just give it just a little bit of time, you can find that it's just very rewarding. You can make good money. The money that you start out with that day when you don't really have a whole lot of experience, maybe you've been to trade school, maybe not, it's not great. It's better than some where you start, that's for sure. But if again, over time, with some experience, you can make a very nice living. And it's rewarding.
Well, thank you, both of you gentlemen, for being part of this. I just want to mention too, because I think in terms of using the pronouns he a lot, that your fields are both open to women too. There are women who might be interested in either one of your fields. There's those great opportunities for both the men and women in your industries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I failed to mention that because believe it or not, in my past, when I went to refrigeration school, I had a girl sitting in front of me. Now that was a lot of years ago, and of course the reason that she was at school, and I asked her this, she says, I have a job working at a large refrigeration company, and I'm the parts girl. So she runs the parts room, and she's there so that as she learns about the refrigeration air conditioning, she understands what a filter dryer is, an expansion valve. And that's what she learned over there, which helps her in her career as a parts person. But there's no reason why a woman could not be a service tech, an installer, or anything else in our field. They'd be more than welcome if the desire is there and they have some hand skills and abilities. They're more than welcome all the time. We do not discriminate.
We have a subcontractor. You'll find interesting, I think, that we have a subcontractor that their top crew foreman is a woman, and she by far knows more about that particular trade than anybody else on that team. And they've been around for a long time. She's a sharp cookie. So absolutely no problem hiring women.
Cool, great. Well, again, just to wrap up, thank you both, Chuck and Bob, for this. This was really interesting, and I think this is really great information for our students. And I just want to thank you for your participation in this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Gary.
Yeah, you're welcome, Gary.
Opportunity.
And I'd also like, again, to thank Absolute Care of Aurora Park for their sponsoring of this program to make this possible, and that we will be having another presentation on Wednesday, March 24th at 10 a.m. We'll have East Aurora Police Chief Shane Krieger talking about careers in law enforcement. So if you're interested in those fields, we hope you'll join us at that time. So again, Bob and Chuck, thank you very much, and we hope to see everybody the next time on March 24th. Thank you.